what other events do you participate in?
Okay. Hey, how are you, Robert? How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good. I think for the sense of getting everyone up and familiar with who we are, we just
Okay.
met ourselves.
Right.
So give everyone some context, and then I'll let you introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself, and then we can give a bit of each other's background. And then from there, we can dive into some lively discussion around
All right.
social impact and how that creates intersectionality of entrepreneurship and vice versa.
Yeah.
So take it away, floor is yours.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I'm Robert Stevenson. I go by Just Ro. I'm a professional artist.
All right.
You can call me Ro, as my friends do.
Okay.
So I'm coming off of the heels of a major project that I did in DC called Gratitude Powers DC.
Okay.
This is a platform, or you can really call it an art installation, but I call it a platform because it was a little sophisticated. We found ways to combine art and data to help bridge gaps between civic leaders and community residents so that we can help foster more communication of the things that residents care about.
Yeah, love that. I've lived in DC for a while. Now live in Southern Maryland, so
Okay.
they probably revoked my DC card.
Yeah.
But that's wonderful work. I think those types of conversations allow people to understand what priorities are really happening in the community.
Exactly.
Similar to you, I've spent 25 years plus in philanthropy. I love, the ability to get into what social impact and philanthropy does.
Right.
I've always done a lot of work in redefining the profile of a philanthropist.
Okay.
And allowing people to understand that philanthropy is just a big word for big-hearted people.
Yeah.
And to your point of being able to allow them to express their priorities that often align with their values,
Right.
and that allow them to create more of an understanding of how they want to get back to the community and engage in social impact from a philanthropic perspective or from a company perspective, or leveraging themselves within their companies and organizations to be able to do the very best. So I'm looking forward to a great conversation. I love the work of philanthropy. I've been in it for a while. I have a master's from Indiana University. I think I'm still one of 9 Black males with a master's philanthropic studies
that's amazing, man.
around the world. So I
celebrate
love,
your accomplishments,
I love
man.
it, man.
Celebrate that.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that I found that I've been able to be a big part of people's lives in ways that I didn't know by just being able to work a certain philanthropic muscle that I didn't know was philanthropy, even from a childhood perspective.
Right.
So from that perspective, it's going to be awesome to get to know you and your work.
I mean, we actually do have really interesting intersectionalities between our work, because philanthropy fuels a lot of the work that artists do. Matter of fact, the work that I did with DC was actually funded by Bloomberg Philanthropy.
Okay. Yep.
So
they're real big right now. They gave a lot of money away.
Bloomberg Philanthropies is trying to create nations with the money that they're giving around the world.
Absolutely.
And I worked with artists from other parts of the world who are also doing things in their communities, working with city governments in order to make change. And every one of these artists, they address change differently because change looks different in every state. And so when you think about philanthropy from that perspective, the money was being used in an appropriate way to actually allow the community to elect its leaders and elect its artists, and then let them create ways for them to engage better. And I love that. I love that they did that.
Yeah. Well, unpack that for me. You've spoken on visual arts.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get into this? How did you matriculate from, whatever you came from to this? Help me understand, or I hope that folks listening understand as well, that how you married your passion. Right. Of visual arts and data that you explained, and then philanthropy, and then also being a voice advocate for the people.
So, I want to say that
it's always difficult to unpack your whole life.
It's always difficult.
Like a soundbite.
Well, because some of it's kind of it's kind of traumatic. You know what I mean?
It's okay.
So you're a young Black man. Let's create a scenario. You're a young Black man in America. What do? You're trying to figure it out. If your parent, I'm a first generation college student, had no one to really kind of guide me through that process. Had no one that ever worked in like a professional office or had, worked in a corporate American setting. And so when I got my first corporate job, and then I'll step back and tell you how I got that job and what I actually did. It was a wake up call, and it really kind of spawned my artistic journey. But I went to the military. I was in the Air Force. I got out of the Air Force. I actually got my degree in engineering, mechanical engineering, right here in Washington D.C. at UDC. Amazing teachers, by the way. All my professors were MIT, Stanford graduates. Got my bachelor's degree, and then worked at Lockheed Martin as my first job as a mechanical engineer. Coming out of the Air Force, wake up call, right? I get to Lockheed, and I start meeting other engineers from around the country. Very vastly different when you're dealing with professionals and people who work in corporate settings than when you're dealing with other people in the military, because the one thing that binds everybody in the military beyond race is class. And we were all pretty much the same. We were all at basic training. We were all there, going through it together. Jump, 10 years ahead, this situation is completely different, because we have people who come from different schools, people who went to Ivy League schools, people who has generational wealth in their family. So a question that I got a lot when I was working at Lockheed was, who are you? What are you? What is your history? What is your background? Where are your people from? And that really spawned the first project that I worked on, which is called Portraits for the Culture. And what I did was I really examined the relationship between African Americans and art through the lens of legacy and collecting portraits and being able to have a legacy to pass down to generations after them. Because this is something that's done in the art world constantly.
Yeah, you're reconstructing identity.
You're reconstructing identity. That's an amazing, oh my God, man. That you're gonna get one for that. That was an amazing explanation. So reconstructing identity. And that actually was my first foray into really understanding how important art is and how it can become a voice for people, and how art is actually a language of advocacy. And so after working at Lockheed, I actually took some time off to pursue art full time and really dig into my social art, public art bag. So I did a lot of traveling. I did projects in Africa. I did projects all over the United States. I've worked for the Morning Foundation down in Miami. And I've had a chance to really see every aspect of art, every side of it, the business side of it, the social side of it. And I've been able to really hone my actual voice as an artist. And I've been able to really understand how to engage with different audiences in order to help them hone their voice and become a conduit to create artwork that essentially represents them. So that leads me to how I got into this project with Washington, with the DC government. I worked with them for about 2 years, and in that 2 years, we really thought deeply about how the government can better connect with the audience, being residents, how we can build bridges. And that's when I started to come up with this concept of gratitude. Gratitude is a way for you to show your appreciation. It's a way for you to show your happiness. But it's also seldom not shared amongst everyone the same. A person who is struggling seemingly may not have the same gratitude as a person who is doing well. And because the city is filled with people at different levels, I thought that if I could bring everybody together on this common theme of gratitude, that we'd all see that we were very much similar, and we'd find in those similarities, we'd be able to open channels of communication. So that was really what the idea of Gratitude Powers DC was about.
Nice. And then within that, I'm guessing you understand the different depths of gratitude. Right. When folks can say, I thank you, right? But the appreciation level might be different for
exactly,
just depending on whose shoes you're standing in.
Exactly.
Right. And then what their needs are. That's really awesome. And I think that goes to the heart of where philanthropy plays a part.
Right.
It's the ability to be a North Star for other people to sort of journey through their gratitude of understanding how to help someone else. At the end of the day, I always tell folks that there's philanthropy, the way that we've been raised in the church and religion to understand it,
right?
And then giving, and then there's obviously the business of philanthropy,
that most
people don't see behind the scenes, and one of the things that's always a bit of a disconnect of what the business of philanthropy looks like, and how do you use it in order to further your goals, based on how you were taught philanthropy coming up, right? And one of the things that I do is I always want to have a conversation with people about, well, what do you know about the back of the house when it comes to philanthropy? Diversified revenue, you know what I mean? Knowing different board of directors, what are their tactics? How do you feel, their missions and their outcomes to make sure that you're not just trying to fit a round peg into a square hole. You know what I mean? Like those are the type of conversations that I've been able to do so well with helping people gain their footing on how to basically understand the business of how to give back, right? And it's been really powerful. Some of the things that I do right now, I currently work at Coppin State University. I'm a vice president of institutional advancement. Oversee their foundation as well. Marketing and communications, fundraising and advancement. And one of the biggest things that come up is, we all give back. You know what I mean? Our goal is to be a North Star for someone. To basically guide them through that journey. So that when they do give back, they understand giving back from a muscle of the heart, but then also giving back from a muscle of the brain, right? Like how do you make sure that, they are leveraging both things that they know about, their intent versus, with their intuition around knowing, that something's still got to make sense.
Something got to make sense.
That's where that social impact comes
common
in. Like
sense,
common sense of, what is that return on investment that I'm getting, right? And sometimes there's a lack of accountability between your heart and your brain, and and then helping, sometimes, and that's why they always say, the road to hell is paved with the deeds of good intentions, because folks get into it the right way for the right reasons, but then not understanding the landscape of what makes really great programs work is knowing the back of the house, and having people like you moving the dial and really coming in and bringing the entrepreneur mindset that, they're just not stuck in program, but they're really using cutting edge technology. They're, understanding exactly, how to use the internet, how to use AI, how to use the data science that you're bringing to the table, big data, small data, everything in between, collecting that, and then how do you create an analysis around that, right? To figure out the best solutions that, out of all this data points. So, one of the biggest things that, I always talk to people about is marry your interests, where your passion to give back and make a difference does not need to suffer via your wallet, right? And a lot of times folks don't know how to sort of balance or integrate that. I always say integration better than balance, but the goal there is I like to see how people learn along the journey so that they understand that they're becoming smart philanthropists along the way. And at the same time, giving back, right? Because you do things different when you know better, right? And then you know exactly how to help people better. Or more efficiently when you educate yourself on the back of the house philanthropy.
You've said a lot of things right there, and I want to unpack a couple of those things because I'm actually curious as an artist, some of the dynamics that go behind philanthropy, because philanthropy is an engine. People, I was talking to you about the Walton Foundation and the Crystal Bridges Art Museum, and how the foundation uses Crystal Bridges as a way to connect with the community through art. But in doing that, they're doing a couple of things, right? But their North Star goal is to uplift the community. Well, you first have to know what's needed in the community to uplift it. So it's almost in a way that philanthropy becomes this social awareness and social change tool. And it's not necessary. And the money that's given in philanthropy, it's almost as if the money, it can behave differently as if it was coming from government or if it was coming from business. And I understand philanthropy as another vehicle to really make change and to have that flexibility to be able to leverage, you know what I mean? To leverage the laws, the rules and the laws of philanthropy. So I guess my question is, what do you see philanthropy going in the future, specifically for entrepreneurship, the arts, and, helping our communities?
I'll say this. Strip away the name or the word philanthropy, and you just have capital.
Exactly. That's where I was getting at.
Got capital.
Unrestricted capital.
You got unrestricted. Well, restricted and unrestricted. Right?
Exactly.
Depending it behaves different. What we need to do is figuring out, how to make funders understand that you want to see me eat, but you got to give me the utensils to cook the food.
You got to get.
Right, because other than that, I'm eating with my hands.
Right.
Just as barbaric. Exactly.
Before
you found. The goal is how do you strike that MOU that allows you to be successful with understanding how you run the program, and then also how do you pay for the program, right? And at the end of the day, that means including yourself. Right. A lot of entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs or philanthropists or program folks, they always put themselves on the back burner. Right. If you don't take care of yourself up front, you're going to fall through the cracks.
Right.
And then that negates what you built because it's not sustainable. Right.
Right.
So, I always look at, how to create capacity grants.
Right.
You know what I mean? How do you go after different stages of money, right?
Right.
No different than a startup capital.
Right.
Different stages of money. Different rounds of money.
Right.
That is the same thing in the philanthropic space, right?
Yeah.
How do you look at different rounds of money that allow you to be solvent, right? And
that
get
is
the job done.
Yeah.
And so when I roll that back, because I recognize most people, when they start talking about philanthropy, a certain chip in their brain just turns on.
Right.
And they don't ask for the things that they need.
Right.
And then you find yourself crippling along, and you can imagine what 92% of all first businesses fail within the first 5 years.
Exactly.
You got a lot of nonprofits that fail within the first 3 to 5 years, because it's even harder because you're not giving anybody a return on investment.
Yeah.
And they're not looking, it's just the people, a lot of times the people that you're supporting.
Right.
So, or you're looking to serve. So I always look back at it as, let's read, that's the back of the house of the philanthropy, like redefining what capital looks like for you in order to build a business.
Right.
And that could be a philanthropic, situation. But at the end of the day, social entrepreneurship, that's where I've really thrown myself into. I sit on the board of American Housing Fund. It's an affordable housing development, similar to Jubilee Housing, where I got my start in Adamsburg, Washington, D.C. And they've done really wonderful things by helping folks of 80% AMI and lower, workforce, teachers, folks who work nursing, city jobs, and then basically allowing them to live where they work. Right. So this developer and I basically said, I came from humble origins, right? That's just a good way to say I didn't grow up poor. I grew up poor. But from that perspective, I thought through and I said, well, this group went from 300 million, 650, 850 million dollars, just shy of $1 billion in their portfolio, about 30 units, multi-use, multi-unit, about 1,400 units, and all within Northwest, clustered together and providing them literacy, healthcare, options and partners, being able to do workforce and getting a job resume. And when you recognize, when you talk to a lot of folks in that space, what they need is the first basic elements, like the essential banking. Right. It's really difficult. Like I call it essential life skills. Yeah. Right. If you don't have somewhere healthy to put your head, it derails everything you're doing. The first rung of the pyramid of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's housing and shelter. Right? Yeah. So with that being said, it's the ability to understand that housing was a big philanthropic pull for me. Right. Knowing my own journey. Right. And then also understanding that I saw a group of folks doing really well, but they also wanted to give back, but they just couldn't connect the way that they wanted to do well in real estate. But at the same time, they wanted to also be able to, ground themselves in what their people needed versus just vouchers and Section 8, yada, yada. They really wanted to get back and create wraparound services. Yeah. So those are the types of things, when I'm saying that you got to know the back of the house along with the intent to serve, is how they all come together in such a way that allows us to all build. Yeah. So, I interviewed for the Gratitude Powers DC. We actually produced a 15-minute documentary that kind of went through DC and actually talked to some of the residents from different wards. One of the people, a subject matter specifically that we interviewed was Andre Perry. Okay. I don't know if you know him, but he has a book out, and his book talks about the lost wealth from Black housing being gentrified. Yeah. And we're gentrifying the block back because it's in the Northwest. Exactly. Class A neighborhood. And a lot of times, you got folks who have been on the voucher list, for a very long time. And then they're moving from Southeast, Southwest, other parts, Northeast, that, have been pushing them out. And then basically saying, look, you can move back into these Class A neighborhoods down the street from the White House. Exactly. You can live, down the street from the Whole Foods and the Trader Joe's and the museums and the charter charter schools and things of that nature. It's the ability of quality of life that you're putting right back into. So the goal is, how do you help them adjust? Right. Like, how do you help them adjust from, Southeast back to Northwest, right? Where they probably haven't been before. They got them back. So it's like you're talking about the Beverly Hillbillies, but it really is. Like, literally, But then when you bring people back to life in a Class A neighborhood, there's a lot of different things that folks aren't used to. Yeah. Right. You're not visiting anymore. Yeah. You live there. Yeah, you live there. You got to take advantage of all the opportunities. That is so interesting. I never thought about that. Right. And reintroduction. That's interesting. It's a real thing.
That is crazy.
And then knowing that you have people who have your back when you're living in a neighborhood
that
doesn't quite look like you anymore.
That doesn't look like you, and you don't know if it supports you.
Yep.
So
exactly.
you know what? It's very interesting you bring that up because
so we need the digital arts.
Well, that's
to
actually
be able to create
that, bro.
The content that allows us to say, this is what we need. This is who we are. This is how we express ourselves. And these are the people that need to listen to us now that we're here.
Bro, that's exactly what Gratitude Powers DC is about.
Yeah.
See, because one of the things that I realized was that what gratitude, there was a lack of gratitude actually from a lot of residents and a lot of people who worked for the city and a lot of people who are leaders in the city. It wasn't a lack of gratitude for themselves or for the work that they did. It was actually the other side not really having gratitude for the other side's work and voice.
Yeah.
And what Gratitude Powers DC does is it allows those individuals to give gratitude for the things that are being done in the city. And you can connect those things directly back to people who are doing those things. Now, what was very revolutionary about Gratitude Powers DC is that every part of the artwork, the installation that people engage with, was a data collection point.
Okay.
So we had ways to collect data using QR codes. We had ways to collect qualitative data by capturing some of the notes that were left on the artwork. We had ways to collect data by taking cameras with people's consent and actually recording some of the people's reactions. And through all of that, we can construct kind of this narrative about, what's going on, how people are feeling, what the essential attitude and tone is. And that can actually be something that helps drive decision making. So in the situation that you're talking about right now, what I intended to do was have Gratitude Powers DC be a way to subvert negative attitudes, to be able to enter a community through positivity and allow people to express what they cared about and then have their needs met as well. That's something different. Usually you feel like you only get your needs met when you complain about something you hate. Have you ever made a comment, a compliment about something and then found that somebody took that compliment and then said to themselves, how can I make that better? And that's what Gratitude Powers DC is really about. We are doing these great things. What do you think about them? We take that and we try to make it better. And that comes from you giving gratitude instead of you complaining or you feeling as if you're not being listened to or if someone's neglecting you. And the thing about Gratitude Powers DC is we tried to get into the most hard to reach communities in DC. The communities that Southeast community where no one wants to go. And we did it by going through the libraries in each one of the communities. So we managed to use all free resources, all city-related resources, and really an art platform to create reach into communities and engage folks in a way that was positive and that allowed them to have their voice heard by the people who are in leadership. That's
powerful.
That's
powerful. And you got to understand, when people see their journey differently, they act differently.
Exactly.
And that's something that I believe wholeheartedly. It's the work that you can't give up on,
right?
Because at the end of the day, if you do, people lose themselves within the project,
exactly,
right? And then it no longer reflects who they are,
exactly,
right? I want to pivot to something you said when you were thinking. I want to ask you earlier about your entrepreneurship approach. Right. What have you learned over the course of your? Well, let me make it specific so you don't have to like unpack a journey road. Talk to me about how you have over the last year. What has kept you up at night? Given your entrepreneur journey. With creating the genius in your craft.
Entrepreneurship and social impact. Those two words are not often found together. In certain communities, yes, but oftentimes, you know what I mean? Your entrepreneurship, you're about capital. You're about social impact. You're about social capital, right? And trying to bridge them together is by making a commitment to the fact that you care about this cause, that North Star goal that you were talking about. And I love how you portray the idea of philanthropy having the back of the house for philanthropy, because that is really where the entrepreneurship for social impact really comes into play. And so you have to learn those things really by going through the fire, that this is very much a business process that needs to have things like data. And that's where I started to realize the importance of using art as a tool and using data as a way to make those inferences about the success and the failures of the work that I was doing, to then be able to go and make a point about why I need more funding, why I need to have this project put in this neighborhood. How can I actually increase the efficacy of this process, you know what I mean, with the help from this organization? And I've been able to convince others of that, you know, people who are in philanthropic circles, people who are in government, that this is a method that can actually spread. So think about gratitude powers St. Louis, gratitude powers Atlanta, gratitude powers the Bronx, gratitude powers LA. And you have an ability to go into these communities and hit some of the hardest hit people and reach them in ways that they have never been touched before. And then someone like you who has a message, who has access, I'm trying to create that road now for you to easily come in and say, I've had the ability to bring money to these communities. I've just never had a vehicle to really transport it in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes a lot. And that's why I asked that question, because, you know, a lot of folks find themselves being a mile wide and an inch deep.
Yeah.
The goal is to be a mile wide and a mile deep, right?
Right.
When being able to describe the impact,
exactly,
and then also how you're going to get there with bringing other people along.
Exactly.
A lot of that's capital.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And at the end of the day, I recognize, you know, when facilitating or advising and or soliciting, that being bullish about who you are and what you believe in, oftentimes that persistence outworks talent.
Exactly.
That persistence outworks, you know, the no's in the room and the naysayers. Right. That persistence of believing in what you do allows people to really, because a lot of them you only need the one, and then they start to tumbleweed in. They really do.
Bro.
Like you really, and it's not just about the stories, you know, you can collect, but it literally is about the messenger in a lot of ways. People give to people.
Yes.
And when you figure out that people give to people, you really start, if you get one, you get the two, you get the three, you get the four, right? And then you get some momentum. The ability is, how are you servicing that 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? How are you stewarding them?
Exactly.
And then after the day, you figure out, like, I'm stewarding them, but you recognize by stewarding the people that they're getting you some gains. Yeah. Other people are watching how you treat them, right? Right. And look, and a lot of people think the beginning of the process often starts with identifying. It's like moves management, right? Practitioner fundraiser. I mean, you know, identify, discover, cultivate, solicit, and steward. Right. But I like to look at it a different way. Is that when individuals are in your space or in my space, it's how do you prepare, position, perform, and preserve, right? Right. If you take that model and you apply it to everything that you're doing, when it comes to how do I prepare myself for this situation, right? How do I position myself and others, right? How do I actually execute, right? And then how do I preserve what I built, right? Those types of things allow us to be really good at what we do when we start to repeat the model with every situation we're doing. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to philanthropy, because you're getting in front of people and repeating the model, repeating the model. You know,
man, you brought up something that triggered a thought in my mind about scaling.
Yeah, and that's really what I'm talking about, the scaling of it. You know?
Entrepreneurship is about scaling. Sorry about that. Entrepreneurship is about scaling. Philanthropy, you don't really think about scaling when you think about philanthropy. Yep. When I started Gratitude Powers DC, I thought about scaling from day one. And I drew back from some of my experiences as an engineer, as a product manager, to understand that it's like I do my neighborhood trash pickup. And I've been doing it every month for a year. And it's great. You know, we keep the trash in our neighborhood up. Then it's like somebody say, hey man, you know, you should spray. This is great. So you're thinking to yourself, there's two things. How am I going to get funding for it? And then how do I scale it even if I did get money for it? Because this is a volunteer run program. So it's like when you think about the systems that you put in place in order so that you can actually scale a philanthropic or an entrepreneurial idea, it comes from day one. And so when you're talking about artwork, that is difficult, right? Because we're talking about a physical product that requires a specific talent to create, but that has such crazy impact. Scaling artwork And it's almost as the artwork as a service.
Yep. Yep.
You know what I mean? Now you're going into this idea of like how art and tech actually blend together. And so I've always had really forward ideas about how do you use art to actually create impact, and how do you kind of, you know, whereas when you pull back the artwork mask, it's really technology under there. And you got to meld the two in order to really, like, you know what I mean, have that to scale those forward thinking ideas. You know what I mean?
And I when getting to scaling, I always try to make a deposit before I make a withdrawal.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from the people that I advise to give money.
Right.
The ability to advise them from a place of they know that I have their best interests in mind.
Right.
Not just from a can you make this gift,
right,
you know, but from a perspective of what is this going to do for your taxes?
Right.
What is this going to do for your legacy mission? What does this do for your ability to network?
Yeah.
You know, what does this do for your ability to get some visibility around the work and the things you believe in?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like literally I'm making a deposit in like different sectors of who that individual is.
Right.
And then from there, being able to hone in on where the best opportunity for them to strike out and say, I really want to go full tilt on this.
Man, that is amazing.
A lot of those things is just how do we get there with, I got to prepare them.
Right.
Then I got to position them.
Right.
Then we have to perform at the work, and then we have to preserve it. And what does that mean? So when I bring a philanthropist to you or a group of individuals to you, my job is to get them primed so that they see a person like you. Right, so that it's not so hard for you always trying to figure out. How do you gotta turn yourself inside out? You got to give a million different stories.
Oh
right?
Man,
you got to turn you're doing so much. It's hard to do that.
It's hard to do everything, man.
Yeah, it's hard to do that work. You know what I mean? The work of doing the work of the people. And the craft. Right, and then I'll turn around and then do the work of doing jumping jacks and backflips. For hoping that they get it and not being demoralized if they don't get it, right? So from that perspective, it's you gotta have to that scale. You gotta have different people willing to be a part of the process. And that's where what I really like about the ability to understand, the front of the house of philanthropy and the back of the house of philanthropy. Right. Is how do you prime people? Like I said at the top of of our discussion was, redefining the profile of a philanthropist, because a lot of folks don't believe that they can be a philanthropist unless they have $1 million. Right. And then what is my impact? What does that do? Right. And then the same way that you've been trying to create data and data points and art that brings, real live narratives and stories to life. Right. And then that they have shelf life so that they're not just here and gone next week.
Exactly.
That people can look back and reflect on them. Right. Because they're real gold. This is like the journey of our people. The goal is how do you get someone to understand all that body of work before they even meet you, right? So they understand how to be prepared and positioned for that, right? So they can be their best selves when understanding that this is something they want to get to. I always ask people when I'm looking for capital and philanthropic space is, tell me your top 3 priorities in philanthropy. Right. Or if I want to know how their acumen, I was like, talk to me about your philanthropic portfolio. Most people look at me like, philanthropic portfolio. Well, I give the Red Cross. I give my Boys and Girls Club. I give my university. And literally, I just made it sound a different way, but literally that's your philanthropic portfolio. How do I help you define what that looks like so you can get maximum impact? So when you look back on your life, you have no regrets about who you helped, the legacy that you built and all the things that come after it. And then, the example that you made, because someone's always modeling their behavior after us, whether we know it or not. Right. And I think that's where I love my work, is being able to stand in the gap of where that need is, and then where the individuals with resources and then connecting them together and allowing them to play such a pivotal role. And then sometimes all I have to do is get out of the way and let the persons, they do their best things with together.
What do you think about so in relation to the idea of connecting philanthropists and organizations that are looking for, for capital? What do you think about like crowdsourcing and microfunding?
Absolutely.
Do you consider that those philanthropic sources?
Look, however you get to that dollar in the legal sense, right? You have to have so many diversified streams of revenue. Email, direct mail, you have, you got your cold calling, you have major gifts, you have estate planning, you have all those different plan giving and all the above. Like you have so many different ways, annual fund, you have so many different ways, corporate, foundation. The goal is I manage all of that underneath, my shops that I've led.
Okay.
The goal is to be able to understand that, not be versed enough to know that one might work for a little while, but then you have to make sure that you're doing enough of a program. Like
I get it now.
There's a program to philanthropy. And a lot of folks just think hammer, nail. Go out, ask people for money, and then hammer, nail, right?
Yeah.
But the bigger issue is it's not just hammer, nail. You have to have a program of each one of these subsets of the giving stream is a specialized role that takes years and decades. To prime in yourself as a professional, right? And from there, that's why when you get so many people trying to be, a jack of all trades in fundraising, and oftentimes those type of opportunities fail because they don't have enough of these different revenue streams and people knowing exactly, how to take advantage of each of them. To allow them. Social media is a different animal on a beast. It's different 20 years ago. Right now, that's the way we move in totality, right? I wish we had a whole nother podcast on just the intersectionality of social impact of social media. But now everybody's an influencer, and you have the micro influencers, and then those are the folks carrying your water, right? And you need champions, but it's not much different than what we used to do by having people on boards, right? Those were your ambassadors, right? Now they just have different types of reach on social media. So the goal is, how do you put people in a situation where you're preparing, what I mean? You're positioning them, you're performing together, and then you're all preserving what you built together.
Listen, man, you have opened my mind up
because we're gonna get into it. Look, we're gonna keep in touch after this. Man. Like, we're definitely gonna keep in touch after this.
Because even this really touched what you just explained is what you had kind of told me earlier, but it really just clicked in my mind. Like, again, you said hammer and nail, but no, it's like there's crowdsourcing, there's church giving. I mean, you might even start with just a gift from the church. Maybe the next thing you do is you crowdsource. Then maybe, there's another platform, you get a grant, and then maybe you get a major funder. I mean, like, that's an actual, like.
What most folks go wrong is that they don't treat them as if they don't have their own individual DNA. Right. So they approach each giving source or revenue source or stream or individuals as if they're all the same. Right. Like there used to be a thing when you meet a foundation, just that you met one foundation. Right. They program officers are different, leadership's different, the way they advocate are different, their priorities or goals are different. The how many programs they can get through, the longevity. I mean, these applications are getting really it's no longer I have a great idea to give back. It's really built in with metrics and how do you prove that ROI, right? And those are the things that people are taking for granted because they haven't done the back of the house philanthropy work. But you have to do it because giving has become so much more sophisticated. And then allowing people to understand the reason why we've been trying to create solutions in different communities and or different problems that we have or social ills is because we walked in it with such a heart, which is needed, but not enough of the metrics and the data and the measurable goals and the impact strategies, what I mean? And then the logic models, right? Like I talk to people like, what's your logic model for giving? What?
They're like, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about? That was in the now those are in the application. Like, what's your logic model? Right. Talk to me. Everyone. Now people are doing smart contracts. Like, what I mean? Yes, I'll unlock this amount of money for you. But if you don't do this, and this to tell me that you are doing no more, are these blank checks for nonprofits. And a lot of folks are falling victim to the old way of, what? We did the hard work of going after that money, but we didn't do enough of, how are we going to prove that we're doing the work, right? Again, I always say a lot of folks always try to recreate the wheel when it comes to a nonprofit. There are so many nonprofits that already exist. Stop starting your own nonprofit. I mean, I understand there's some really great ones that take off, but if you just get involved with nonprofits that are doing the work, and even if you approach them and say, look, I like the work you're doing. I love the work you're doing. You've given me some inspiration, but I have a different twist to it. You would often find that people are open to funding your dreams inside of the nonprofit versus you going out and trying to find your own additional funding.
Wow.
Right? Like I've seen that happen where they need people to keep the evolution of their services going in a direction that impacts people. But everyone's always trying to start their own thing that allows people not to say a nonprofit will bring you on and give you a contract and work with you. If you just understand, you stop looking for the wrong funder.
Bro,
nonprofits have money. They can fund your work.
That is powerful. What you're talking about, the barriers to entry, and it's almost like the intellectual barriers to entry for the average person who might have money. Because, you know, something that I learned when I was a fellow at the Aspen Institute's Ideas Festival recently. And
congrats, brother.
Oh my God, man. And like, it was amazing because, like, you know, you got to see people who were asking questions to people like you, to experts, billionaires who did not know how to actually philanthropically use their money. There's association between intelligence and wealth, and those two things seem correlated, but in a lot of ways they're not. You know, you never know how somebody got their money, but in the sense of figuring out what to do with it, the smart people have people like you around them to help them. And so that's one of the things I really learned. And just, you're really blowing my mind, because it's like, first of all, no artist has access to you, right? Or most artists don't have access to you. And most artists aren't even thinking about tech and data. They're not thinking about how to create data around their artwork to be able to get those ROI, to be able to get that ROI data. So this is a revolutionary conversation. And this, I call it a barrier to entry, because I had to essentially go through hell to even get an invite. To get an invite to sit here with you. I'm one out of millions. This needs to be a conversation that hopefully others can see, and it inspires them so that they can start to think innovatively and get out of this box of like, oh, I'm just a painter. No, you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, and the sky is the limit, and painting just happens to be your vehicle. But where that goes, it's completely up to you and your imagination. You know what I mean?
No, I will. I've raised personally over $50 million, right? And then been a part of endowments and campaigns in the billions. And the one thing is, I've learned the repetition of how philanthropists think, how donors think, from individuals to corporations, foundations, associations, churches, everyone, getting into the heart of who they are. It's a really big deal. One of the biggest things that I always tell people who are doing really, really great work, like the work you're doing, is you remember you remember we were in school and they used to have this game called the Oregon Trail? All right. And you really had to make it from the East Coast to the West Coast without getting bit, starving, your wagon didn't fall apart. And rob, you know what I mean? Yada, attacked by bandits, yada, right? The problem with what most people don't understand about the Oregon Trail, right, is you have to be careful who you go on the journey with. Because when you have super optimistic people who don't understand the reality of what they're about to engage in, right? Heart's in the right place. They see the vision of getting, you know what I mean, and settling in a different land and all the prosperity that they're going to receive in life. But they don't understand really the calculated risk of what it's going to take to get to that. And oftentimes it isn't that you get, you don't suffer as a casualty because you did something wrong. You suffer the casualty because somebody else you took along with you got you killed, right? That's the same in business, and it's the same in building a nonprofit and your vision to help people, right? Be careful sometimes who you bring along, because a lot of times, a lot of folks, they might have that pure optimism of, never give up, never fail. I respect that. I love the persistence, right? And I don't want to contradict myself, but I have to. But the goal on that too is what you're doing around adding different metrics. We talked a little bit before we got on the podcast of and different benchmarks to celebrate success and know that you're going in the right direction. That's really important to funders, right? Because they want to know, like, look, we got someone, their heart's in the right place, they got the vision, but they want to know if they're going to go on this Oregon Trail with you, right?
You're going to go the whole way.
That you're not talking about, driving day and day at night, what I mean? That they understand that you understand that there is a calculated route to where you want to go and how you want to get there. Right. And so, and I always think about that because, everyone wants something more on the other hill, but no one ever thinks about the journey and what goes into, preparing for the journey. right? And I don't want to sound like a broken record when I say, I've been living by this sort of this 4P methodology of Joshua, how do I prepare the social entrepreneur? How do I prepare the philanthropist? And how do I prepare people in between looking to help everyone?
Yeah.
To make sure that they're right for the journey. They're the right fit for the journey.
Yeah.
Right. Some people are advisors.
Yeah.
They're not meant to be on, your board.
Yeah.
Some people are sponsors, and then they're looking for it to make sure you get to the right space. And some people are mentors, right?
Yeah.
So you got to know how to put different people in different categories
Yeah.
so that you don't fall victim to having everybody in there and then you ain't making through their own. The philanthropic journey is tough, right?
Bro,
and it's really tough, especially when you're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
There's nothing more demoralizing when you know that your heart's in the right place, but you just are hitting every single barrier because you know what? We're just not in the right space of being calculated enough to just sort of work that other muscle, which is the back of the house philanthropy. Yeah. So I mean that's. Look, you're doing some wonderful things, and I think you're on the cutting edge. We talked a little bit before this of how data, how narrative, story, the art. Social media means something so much more to you than me now because the way that you're able to use it, get that stories out. But more importantly, done a lot of these things where, listen to people's stories and where they come from. My mom used to always say, she was a minister, don't ask people how they're doing if you ain't got time to listen, right? You really have time to listen. You're in the trenches of listening and bringing their stories and who they are so that they're seen to life, right? And I admire the hell out of that. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, the amount of different, even as a black man, we talked about that, of taking on
stress,
the stress of your own life, but taking that on and understanding that people are trying to have a better life, and especially not only for themselves but for the people that they are protecting. You're doing a lot. You're doing a lot,
man. You know what? I appreciate that, and I want to say that it's just a shame that there are so few of you. You know what I'm saying? It's a shame there's so few of you because we need more people who can help, I think, our community understand the value in not only making money but also giving back. Because I think that sometimes we miss the mark on that. We are very, very attuned to making money and trying to do better for ourselves. And it doesn't really seem like there's an immediate value in giving back. And then I appreciate you for that. And I would love to end this conversation really with us saying something we're grateful for, since we're in the spirit of gratitude. You know what I'm saying?
I would say I'm grateful that I learned the depths of gratitude. Just when I felt great, there's a difference between happiness and gratefulness. Oftentimes happiness is up and down. It comes and goes. One day you can be happy, one day you're not, right? Boss pissed you off, something didn't go your way.
Exactly.
You had a great day, right?
Exactly.
And then you're on cloud 9. But I recognize there are depths and levels to gratitude. And understanding what that means. It's not just a buzzword, right? To be grateful. It really is understanding, how do you have joy? And there's a difference between joy and happiness. Like, you don't always have to be happy, but that joy cup has to be full, right? And the other part of that is, the gratefulness that I've learned to cultivate in my own life, as an expression of joy, is the ability to understand that they're not always in conflict of each other. The two can occupy the same space, same time. Right. I can be not happy at the moment and still have a lot of joy. Right. And have a lot of gratitude. Right. And I can also say, and not shame myself by saying I'm joyful, but I really don't like how these things are going right now. Without feeling like I'm being ungrateful. So I've had to learn how to differentiate the different buckets of gratitude, which are the depths. You know what I mean?
I am grateful for being able to share my journey with you, and then to hear your perspective, which really reinforces the reason why I even started with gratitude in the first place. Because I recognize that because what was interesting is that everyone, when I started off the interviews, I asked them, what did you think about gratitude? What do you think it means? They gave me their definition. And it was always very similar, where some people's definition of gratitude they thought it was contractual or transactional or situational.
Yeah.
They didn't recognize that you can have perpetual gratitude no matter what situation you are in life.
Yeah.
And I think that when you think about, when I think about, what you just said, that you can have joy even if you're not happy with the situations that are going on, and you can be grateful for your situation in life. That's that type of wisdom. It fuels faith, and it grows you into the person that you are now, because you are brilliant and insightful, and within this hour have enlightened me, man, in a way where, like, now I'm leaving here and I'm really acting on some of the things that you said, and I'm grateful for that. And that's only a conversation.
Yeah.
And we get to record it, and hopefully somebody else
get
hears
to
it
see
and it does something for them too.
I agree with that.
You know what I mean?
We're gonna be here for a while,
bro.
man. I'm glad
I
you're in my
appreciate
life
that,
now.
man. Yes, definitely.
Hey, man. That was good.
Did we go over? Would you mind?